I've driven the Blue Ridge Parkway more times than I can count, usually in the daylight when the leaves are turning and the overlooks are packed with tourists snapping pictures. But that trip in late October 2019 was different. I was coming back from a job interview in Roanoke, heading north toward my sister's place outside Charlottesville, trying to outrun the regret of bombing the interview and the quiet realization that I was 34 with nothing to show for it but a 10-year-old Tacoma and a duffel bag of clothes in the back seat. The sun dropped fast behind the ridges, and by the time I passed Meadows of Dan, the fog rolled in like someone had poured milk across the road. Visibility went from 100 yards to 10 feet in the space of a minute. High beams just made it worse, turning everything into a wall of gray. I eased off the gas and started looking for any place to pull off and wait it out. That's when I saw the sign, Pinecrest Motor Inn. The neon V in vacancy was flickering like it was about to give up, but the rest of the letters glowed a sickly pink against the mist. I'd never noticed the place before, and I've driven that stretch dozens of times. It sat back from the road maybe 50 yards, a single-story cinder block row of rooms with a little office at the end, and a gravel lot that hadn't seen fresh stone in years. My phone had no service, the fog wasn't lifting, and I was bone tired. I figured one night in a cheap motel beat sleeping in the truck with the windows fogging up and every set of headlights on the parkway looking like they were coming straight at me. I parked close to the office, grabbed my wallet and duffel and walked in. The bell over the door gave a tired jingle. The man behind the counter didn't look up from his newspaper. He was old, 70s maybe, wearing a flannel shirt that had been washed so many times the pattern was gone. What was left of his hair was slicked back with something greasy. A small black and white television on the shelf behind him played a test pattern with that annoying tone. The whole place smelled like mildew and burnt coffee. "Evening," I said. "You got a room?" He turned a page slow, like he hadn't heard me. Then he reached under the counter without looking and slid a key across the formica. Brass tag said 12. $45, he muttered. I pulled out two 20s and a 10. He took the money, still never lifting his eyes, and dropped the bills into a metal cash box. "Room's been paid for," he said, voice flat as creek ice. "Years ago." I laughed, figuring he was half senile or just messing with the out-of-towner. "Right, well here's tonight's then." He finally glanced up. His eyes were the color of dirty dishwater. "Already paid," he repeated, slower this time, like I was the one not understanding. "Checkout's at 11. I took the key and walked out. The fog had swallowed my truck already. I followed the row of doors by memory, counting down until I found 12 at the very end, farthest from the office. The door was painted that chipped forest green every old motel seems to use. I slid the key in, turned the knob, and stepped inside. The room hit me with that familiar stale smell, cigarette smoke baked into the carpet, cheap cleaner trying and failing to cover it. One double bed with a Chanel spread the color of dried blood, a particle board nightstand, ancient television bolted to the dresser, and a single lamp with a crooked shade. I dropped my duffel on the chair and reached for the light switch. That's when I saw it. My wallet was sitting open on the nightstand, right beside the Gideon Bible. Not just any wallet, my wallet. Brown leather, worn soft at the corners, little fray on the billfold where I always tuck my debit card. It was flipped open to the clear plastic window where my driver's license should have been. Empty. I stood there staring, hard doing this slow thud against my ribs. I'd had the wallet in my hand 30 seconds ago when I paid the clerk. I checked my pockets. Nothing. Empty. I told myself I was tired, that maybe I'd dropped it outside and the old man picked it up, decided to have a little fun with me. I searched the room anyway, under the bed, in the bathroom, even opened the dresser drawers like maybe I'd set it down without thinking. Nothing. Just that open wallet staring at me like it belonged there. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to breathe slow. It's fine, I thought. Tomorrow I'll get the license replaced, cancel the cards, whatever. Just get some sleep. I left the wallet where it was, too creeped out to touch it again, and went to wash up. The bathroom mirror was cracked in the corner and the fluorescent light buzzed like a dying insect. I splashed water on my face and tried not to look at myself too long. When I came back out, the room felt colder. The heater under the window rattled but never quite kicked on. I pulled the curtains tight, took off my boots, and crawled under the covers, still wearing my jeans and hoodie. The mattress sagged so bad I could feel the springs in my spine. I don't know what time I finally drifted off, but it wasn't restful. I kept jerking awake every time a car hissed past on the parkway, headlights sweeping across the curtains like searchlights. At some point, the room phone rang. Old rotary thing on the nightstand, beige plastic gone yellow with age. One rang, two. I stared at it, waiting for it to stop. It rang 8 times before going silent. I lay there in the dark, telling myself it was a wrong number, that motels get prank calls all the time. 5 minutes later, it rang again. Same thing, 8 rings, silence. I picked it up on the 3rd round just to make it stop. Hello? Nothing at first. Then breathing. Heavy, wet, like someone who'd been running hard and couldn't quite catch their wind. Not speaking, just listening. I could almost feel him on the other end, waiting for me to say something else. "Who is this?" I asked, voice cracking worse than I wanted. The breathing hitched, then steadied, and the line went dead. I sat up in bed, heart hammering so loud I was sure whoever was out there could hear it through the walls. I stared at the phone a long time, then unplugged it from the wall and set it on the dresser across the room. Childish maybe, but it made me feel better. I must have dozed again, because the next thing I knew, the digital clock on the nightstand read 3:17 a.m., red numbers glowing like fresh blood. And the door handle turned. Slow. Real slow. Like the person on the other side had all the time in the world and knew exactly how long it would take me to notice. The metal rattled just a little, then stopped. I froze under the covers, breath stuck in my throat. Another soft rattle, testing. Then pressure. Steady, patient pressure, the kind that says, "I can wait longer than you can hold this door." I flew out of bed, bare feet hitting the freezing carpet, and threw my weight against the door just as the handle dropped all the way. Something pushed back, not hard, just enough to let me know it was stronger than me. I dug my heels in, shoulder burning, and reached up with one shaking hand to slide the chain. The chain was already on. I stared at it, confused, because I sure as hell hadn't locked it when I came in. The pressure stopped. Silence so complete I could hear my pulse in my ears. I stayed there, pressed against the door, counting to 100, then 200. Nothing. No footsteps walking away, no car starting, just the fog pressing against the window like it wanted in too. I dragged the dresser across the floor, particle board scraping loud enough to wake the dead. And then I sat on the bed with my back to the wall, knees pulled up, staring at the door until the sun finally started bleeding gray around the edges of the curtains. When the clock hit 7, I moved the dresser, cracked the door, and peeked out. Fog still thick, but daylight now. My truck sat exactly where I'd left it, windshield covered in dew. No footprints in the gravel, no sign anyone had been near my room. I grabbed my duffel, left the key on the dresser, and walked fast to the office. The old man was in the same spot, same newspaper. I slapped a brass key on the counter. "Checking out," I said, voice rough from no sleep. He folded the paper slow and finally looked at me. Really looked. His eyes were red-rimmed, tired, but there was something else in them I couldn't name. "You're the first one," he said. He said it flat, like reading tomorrow's weather. "Most folks don't make it to morning." I stood there feeling the cold seep through my hoodie. What the hell does that mean? He just shrugged and opened his newspaper again. "Drive safe." I walked out without another word, climbed in my truck, cranked the heat, and got back on the parkway doing 80 until the fog burned off around Fancy Gap. I stopped at the first gas station with bars on my phone and canceled every card, reported the license stolen, told myself it was just some sick prank, that the old man found my wallet when I dropped it, set the whole thing up to scare me. But here's the part that still keeps me up some nights. When the new license came in the mail 6 weeks later, the picture wasn't the one I took at the DMV. It was me, yeah, same tired eyes, same 2-day stubble, but I was standing in a motel room I'd never seen before, wearing the exact clothes I had on that night. And in the background, just visible over my shoulder, was a door with the number 12 on it. I called the Pinecrest Motor Inn. Number's been disconnected for years. Drove the parkway myself last fall, looking for the place. Nothing. Just mile after mile of guardrail and mountain laurel. No crumbling cinder block building, no flickering pink sign. Sometimes when I'm on a long drive and the fog starts closing in, I'll pull over and check my wallet just to make sure everything's still there. And every time I see that brass key on my keyring I don't remember picking up, I wonder how many nights are left on the tab someone else already paid, and whether next time the chain will already be locked from the outside when I walk in. I still don't know why we picked that particular October weekend to drive up the Blue Ridge Parkway. Emily had found some article about secret overlooks and peak color and insisted it would fix everything that had been quietly breaking between us for months. We both pretended it was just about the leaves, but we knew it was the last trip we'd take before deciding whether to stay together or to let the whole thing drift apart. So we loaded her little Subaru with flannel shirts, a cooler of craft beer, and the kind of forced optimism that makes you talk too loud in gas stations. By the time we reached Fancy Gap, the sun was gone, the sky the color of a healing bruise, and every inn and cabin for 50 miles had no vacancy signs glowing like warnings. That's how we ended up at the Dogwood Inn, a 2-story clapboard place tucked so deep in a hollow the GPS gave up and just showed us sitting in the middle of green nothing. The parking lot was gravel and mud. A single string of orange bulbs ran along the porch roof, flickering every time the wind moved through the laurel. Mr. Harlan met us at the screen door like he'd been waiting on the other side all evening. He was tall, stooped, wearing a cardigan that had once been brown and was now the color of creek silt. His smile never quite reached his eyes, and he kept rubbing his left wrist like it ached from old weather. "Y'all are lucky," he said, voice soft as the dust on the registration book. "Only one room left. My wife always said to save the best for folks who truly needed it." Emily gave me that quick sideways look, half amused, half uneasy, but we were too tired to keep hunting. The lobby smelled of wood smoke and lemon oil, the kind of clean that's been applied so many times it starts to feel like a lie. Behind the counter hung a framed photograph of a woman in a pale blue dress, dark hair pinned up, smiling like she knew a secret. She was beautiful in the way old pictures sometimes make people beautiful, like the photographer caught them right before something terrible happened. "That's Mrs. Harlan," the old man said, noticing my stare. "Passed 10 years ago come spring. Cancer took her quick, but she still keeps the books, you know. Always was better with numbers than me." He chuckled, but it came out dry, like leaves scraping pavement. I figured he was one of those widowers who talks to the dead because the living got too quiet. I signed the register, paid cash, because the card reader was acting up, and he handed us a heavy brass key with a faded plastic tag. Room 7. The stairs creaked under our weight like they resented being wakened. Room 7 sat at the end of the hallway, past a line of closed doors that felt watchful. Inside, everything was floral and dark wood, rose-patterned wallpaper, a quilt thick enough to smother you, a single window overlooking the back slope where the mountain drops straight into blackness. Emily dropped her bag and flopped on the bed, laughing about how it felt like sleeping in her grandma's house. I opened a window a crack because the room was stuffy and smelled faintly of talcum powder and something metallic underneath. The night air came in cold and clean, carrying the smell of wet leaves and distant wood smoke. We drank 2 of the beers on the porch downstairs, sitting in rocking chairs that moved even when we weren't rocking them. Mr. Harlan had gone to bed, or at least the light behind the office window went dark. The only sounds were the wind in the hemlocks and the occasional pop from the fireplace inside. Emily leaned her head on my shoulder, and for a little while it felt like maybe the weekend could still save us. We went back upstairs around midnight, brushed our teeth side by side in the tiny bathroom with the clawfoot tub, and crawled under that heavy quilt like nothing in the world could touch us. I woke up sometime later because the room was too quiet. Not peaceful quiet, absolute dead air quiet. The kind you only get deep in the mountains when even the crickets give up. Emily was asleep beside me, mouth slightly open, one arm flung across my chest. Moonlight came through the gap in the curtains and painted a silver stripe across the floor. That's when I heard the footsteps. Soft, bare feet on the hallway's worn runner carpet. Slow, deliberate, like someone counting boards. They stopped right outside our door. I lay there staring at the ceiling, telling myself it was another guest getting ice or using the bathroom at the end of the hall. Then came the humming. Low, almost under the breath, a hymn I have remembered from childhood, something about crossing the river. The voice was a woman's, gentle but certain, the kind of voice that could sing you to sleep or sing you straight into the ground. Emily stirred but didn't wake. The humming went on for maybe 30 seconds. Then the footsteps moved on, fading toward the stairs. I told myself I'd imagined it. Old houses creak, grief makes people hear things. Whatever excuse let me close my eyes again. But the air in the room felt different after that. Thicker, like someone had opened a cedar chest full of old grief and left it sitting in the middle of the floor. Morning came gray and slow. Fog pressed against the windows so thick we couldn't see the trees 10 feet away. Emily and I went down to the dining room, where Mr. Harlan had set out coffee, grits, and scrambled eggs that tasted faintly of wood smoke. There were 4 other guests, an older couple from Ohio, a young guy with a beard and a Virginia Tech hoodie, and a woman traveling alone who kept staring at the portrait of Mrs. Harlan like she recognized her. Conversation was polite and tired until the bills came. Mine was folded on a small china plate, handwritten on heavy cream paper in perfect old-fashioned cursive. The total was higher than what I'd paid the night before. At the bottom, under room charge and tax, someone had written in the same neat hand, "Company, $28. Every single guest had the same extra line, different amounts. The woman traveling alone went pale when she saw hers. Emily laughed nervously. "What's this company thing?" Mr. Harlan was clearing plates, moving slow. He didn't look up when he answered. "My wife always said nobody should eat alone. She hated when folks left early too. Charged extra if you tried rushing off without proper goodbyes." The Ohio man tried to joke about it, asked if Mrs. Harlan accepted Venmo. Nobody laughed. We all paid cash. Nobody's card would go through that morning either, and got out as quick as we could. The fog was still thick, the gravel lot slick underfoot. Emily kept looking back at the inn like she expected someone to be standing on the porch waving goodbye. No one was. We didn't talk much on the drive home. The leaves were beautiful, sure, but the color felt muted, like someone had turned down the saturation on the world. We broke up in December, quiet and mutual, the way a scab finally peels off without much pain, but plenty of blood underneath. Life moved on. I got a new apartment, started running again, told myself the Dogwood Inn was just one of those weird mountain stories you'd laugh at later. Then the Christmas card came. No return address, postmarked Boone, NC. Heavy cream envelope, my name and address written in that same perfect cursive. Inside, a single card with a tasteful poinsettia on the front. When I opened it, one line in black ink. "You still owe for the company." Nothing else, no signature. I stood in my kitchen holding that card for a long time, feeling the same thickness in the air I'd felt that night in room 7. I called Emily, first time in months, and read it to her. She went quiet so long I thought the call dropped. "I got one too," she finally whispered. Same words, exact same handwriting. We met for coffee the next day, awkward and careful like 2 people who'd once known each other's bodies and now barely knew how to sit across a table. She showed me her card, identical envelope, identical cursive. We drove up together the following weekend, no plan except to see the place again, prove it was just a prank, maybe confront Mr. Harlan. The Dogwood was gone. Not closed, gone. The hollow was still there, the gravel turnaround, the porch steps leading nowhere, but the building itself had been razed to the foundation, charred beams and broken glass, like it burned years ago and nobody bothered cleaning up. A rusted realtor sign read, 10 acres, commercial potential. We stood there in the cold, looking at the portrait of Mrs. Harlan we found half buried in the weeds, glass cracked, her painted eyes watching us the same way they had in the lobby. Emily started crying, quiet, the way she always did when she was really scared. I put my arm around her and felt, for just a second, the brush of fingers on my shoulder that weren't hers. When I turned, there was nothing but fog curling through the burned timbers. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear that humming, soft, patient, coming from the hallway that isn't there anymore. And every December, I get another card, same cream envelope, same line inside. The amount keeps going up. Last year it said, "Interest is compounding. She hates when folks leave early." I was hauling a load of lumber up from Winston-Salem to a job site outside Galax when the radiator holes on my old Ford decided it had carried me far enough. It was late October, the kind of raw, wet cold that sneaks under your collar and stays there. Just past Fancy Gap, the temperature dropped hard. Fog poured over the ridges like someone upended a bucket of smoke, and the truck started coughing steam. I limped it another mile or two until the engine gave one last shudder and died right beside a faded sign that read, "Ridgeview Motel, vacancy." The paint was peeling in long curls, and half the letters were gone, but the orange neon V still buzzed like a dying wasp. I'd driven the Parkway for 15 years and never once noticed the place. Figured it was one of those old motor courts that only show up when you're too tired to question things. The office door stuck when I pushed it, like the frame had swollen from years of mountain damp. Inside smelled of wet newspapers and something sweet rotten underneath. A single bulb swung from the ceiling on a frayed cord, throwing shadows across a counter scarred with cigarette burns. The night manager was asleep in a vinyl recliner, mouth open, a line of drool shining on his chin. He was maybe 60, wearing a stained work shirt with Earl stitched in red over the pocket. I cleared my throat twice before he jerked awake, eyes red and watery. "Need a room," I said. "Truck broke down, just for the night." Earl blinked slow, scratched at a scab on his neck, and reached under the counter without getting up. He slapped a brass key on the formica. Tag read 204. 40 even, he rasped. "Last one we got." I fished out 2 20s and laid him down. He didn't count it, just let his hand fall back into his lap. "Stairs are out back," he muttered, already sinking toward sleep again. "Elevator's been broke since '89. I shoulda asked questions right then. The second floor walkway only had 8 doors on each side, and the numbers I could see from the lot went 201 to 208 on the near end, 209 to 216. No 204. But I was cold, soaked through from wrestling with the radiator, and the idea of sleeping in the cab with no heat sounded worse than any bad motel. I grabbed my duffel and a flashlight from the truck and headed for the concrete stairs tucked behind the ice machine. The stairs went up 1 flight, then kept going. A second flight, narrower, metal instead of concrete, painted the same chipped green as the doors. I figured maybe the numbering was weird, like they skipped 13 or something. The fog was so thick I couldn't see the ground anymore. My boots clanged on the grating, echoing strange, like the sound was coming back from somewhere farther away than it should. At the top was a short landing and a single door. Brass numbers, 204. No other rooms, no walkway, just that one door stuck on the side of the building like somebody glued it there after the rest was finished. The key turned too easy, like the lock had been oiled yesterday. Inside, the room was wrong from the first breath. Clean. Not motel clean with cigarette holes patched and mystery stains on the carpet, but spotless. White walls, no pictures, bed made up tight with hospital corners, carpet so new it still had vacuum lines. The air smelt faintly of bleach and pine, the way funeral homes do. I dropped my bag and stood there dripping on the mat, trying to make sense of it. One window with heavy blackout curtains, a dresser that looked brand new, and a closet door standing open just enough to show darkness inside. I pulled the curtains, nothing but fog pressed against the glass. couldn't even see the parking lot lights. I told myself that was normal up here, that the cloud ceiling was low, that I was just tired. I stripped off my wet shirt, hung it over the heater vent, and sat on the edge of the bed to pull off my boots. That's when I noticed the quiet. No highway noise, no wind, not even the hum of the neon sign. Just my own breathing and the soft tick of the wall clock I hadn't seen until then. 11:47 p.m., red numbers glowing. I needed to piss and figured I'd check the bathroom, maybe wash the grease off my hands. On the way past the closet, I nudged the door wider with my elbow and froze. The closet was full of Polaroids, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, pinned to the back wall, overlapping like fish scales. Every single picture was the same bed I was sitting on, shot from the foot looking toward the headboard. Different people asleep under the same white blanket. Men, women, some alone, some couples. Clothes from every decade. Bell bottoms, members-only jackets, flannel from the 90s. A girl in a hoodie with a college logo I didn't recognize. Dates scrawled in black marker on the white borders. 1973, 1981, 1997, 2004, 2012. The newest one was dated 3 weeks ago. All of them sleeping, mouths open, chests rising and falling slow. None of them awake. I backed out of the closet and shut the door hard, heart hammering so loud I was sure it would wake whoever might be listening. My hands shook while I searched the room for another exit, any exit. The window wouldn't budge, painted shut years ago. The bathroom had no window at all, just a mirror over the sink that reflected me looking like a man about to be sick. I splashed water on my face and tried to think. Maybe it was some sick art project. Maybe the manager was a creep who photographed guests. Either way, I wasn't staying to find out. I grabbed my bag, my wet shirt, didn't even bother with boots, and yanked the door open. The landing was gone. Where the metal stairs had been was smooth cinder block, painted the same green. No sign there had ever been an opening. I beat on the wall with my fist until my knuckles bled. Solid. I screamed for Earl, for anyone, voice bouncing back flat and useless. The fog outside the window had thickened until the glass looked frosted. I was sealed in. I don't know how long I stood there before I noticed the mirror in the bathroom was loose. The frame shifted when I leaned on the sink, like it was hung on a hinge instead of nails. I pulled it toward me and felt cold air hit my face. Behind the mirror was a narrow wooden door. No handle, just a keyhole. My room key fit. I turned it, pushed, and stumbled out into the parking lot. Same gravel, same fog, but wrong. My truck was gone. Every light bulb in a motel sign was burned out, except one that flickered closed forever in orange. The office door hung open, bell jingling in a wind I couldn't feel. I ran inside barefoot, shards of gravel cutting my soles. The recliner was empty, counter bare except the registry book lying open. My name was on the last line, signature perfect, dated tomorrow. Pen still wet. I tore pages out looking for anything. Phone numbers, addresses, some explanation. But the earlier entries were all the same. Names I didn't recognize, dates years apart. Every signature in different handwriting, but every checkout time left blank. I grabbed a book and ran back into the fog, screaming for help that never came. Hours later, or minutes, time felt slippery. I found the parkway again. A state trooper picked me up walking north in just my jeans and socks, half frozen, clutching that registry like it could save me. They towed my truck the next morning, said it was parked neat as you please in the lower lot of an overlook 10 miles south. Keys in the ignition, no steam, no busted hose, like I'd left it there on purpose. The Ridgeview Motel was boarded up, had been since 1998, when the owner disappeared and the bank took it. Trooper drove me past so I could see for myself. 2 stories, yes, but the top floor ended at room 216. No extra stairs, no green paint, no 204. Just plywood over the windows and a chain on the office door. I still have the registry book hidden in a box under my bed. Sometimes I take it out and flip to the last page. My name is still there. Check out blank. and every couple of years, a new entry appears below it. Someone else's name, someone else's handwriting. Date always a few weeks in the future. Check out, never filled in. I keep checking the brass key on my ring key, the one I swear I threw into the New River the day after. It's always back by morning, cold as creekstone. And when the fog rolls thick on the parkway and I'm too tired to keep driving, I pull over and lock my doors and wait for sunrise, because I know if I close my eyes too long, I'll open them in that clean white room again. Blanket tucked under my chin, camera flash already fading from the foot of the bed. Another Polaroid waiting to be pinned up with the rest. I'd been on the road since 4 that morning, hauling a trailer full of antique furniture from a storage auction in Charleston up to a dealer in Knoxville. By the time I crossed into Virginia, the sun had dropped behind the mountains and the fog started rolling in thick, the kind that turns your headlights into useless cones of milk. I was running on coffee in spite, but my eyes kept slipping shut at 65 miles an hour. So when I saw the pale yellow glow of a motel sign, Laurel Rest Inn, vacancy, just past mile marker 171, I took the exit before my brain even finished arguing. The place looked like it had been waiting for someone to remember it existed. One long, low building, white paint gone gray, a row of doors facing the parkway like tired sentries. The office light was on, a single bulb behind rippled glass. I parked nose end to room 6, killed the engine, and sat there a minute listening to the tick of cooling metal and the soft hush of trucks on a distant highway. My plan was simple: 4 hours of sleep, back on the road by 3, delivered a load before the buyer closed at noon. I grabbed my overnight bag and the last 20 in my wallet and walked to the office. The bell over the door gave a weak jingle. Behind the counter sat a girl who couldn't have been more than 16, maybe 17. Skinny, pale, hair the color of weak tea pulled back in a ponytail that looked like it hurt. She wore a faded green smock with Laurel Rest stitched in cursive over the pocket. Her hands were folded tight, knuckles white, and her eyes, Lord, those eyes, were too big for her face, the kind of haunted you see on missing kids posters. "Room for one?" I asked, trying to sound friendlier than I felt. She didn't speak at first, just stared like she was memorizing me. Then she slid a registration card across the counter. The pen was one of those cheap plastic ones attached with a bead chain. I filled in my name, truck tag, the usual. When I pushed the card back, she finally opened her mouth. $40, she whispered, voice so soft I had to lean in. Cash only. I laid the 20 on the counter. She looked at it like she'd never seen money before, then picked it up slow and tucked it into a metal box under the register. She reached for a key, room 6, brass tag worn smooth, and placed it on the counter without letting go right away. "Don't use the ice machine on the second floor," she said, eyes flicking up to mine and away again. "It's broken." I laughed a little, exhaustion making me stupid. "Honey, I'm not planning on cocktails, just sleep." She didn't smile, just pushed the key toward me and stepped back into the shadows behind the counter like she wanted distance. Room 6 smelled like every roadside motel I've ever stayed in. Old smoke, industrial cleaner, and something damp that never quite dries. One double bed, brown quilt, television with rabbit ears wrapped in foil. I kicked off my boots, set my alarm for 2:45, and was asleep before my head dented the pillow. I woke up choking on my own heartbeat. The room was pitch black, except for the red glow of the clock, 1:58 a.m. My mouth tasted like copper, and I was sweating through my t-shirt even though the room was cold. I needed water, something. The bathroom tap ran brown for 10 seconds before clearing, and the taste was worse than nothing. I remembered the Coke machine I'd seen by the stairs. Ice would help. There was no ice machine on the first floor, just a sign with an arrow pointing up. Ice, second floor. I cursed under my breath, grabbed the plastic bucket from the dresser, and patted out in my socks. The fog had swallowed everything. I couldn't see the highway anymore, couldn't even see my truck 10 feet away. The metal stairs were slick with condensation. I climbed slow, one hand on the railing, bucket banging against my leg. The second floor landing was darker than it should have been. No security light, no glow from the office, just a single vending machine humming to itself, and beside it, an old chest-type ice maker, the kind with the sliding lid. I lifted it. The smell hit me first, sweet, metallic, wrong. The bucket filled fast, cubes clattering, and then something heavier slid out with 'em. Teeth. Dozens of them, some yellowed, some bright white, a few steel pink at the root. They bounced across the landing like hailstones. One rolled to a stop against my bare foot. I dropped the bucket and ran. The stairs felt longer going down, metal ringing under my weight. I hit the gravel hard, palms stinging, and kept running until I slammed into the office door. The bell jangled like it was laughing. The girl was exactly where I'd left her. Same position, hands folded, same scared eyes. The $20 bill I'd given her was sitting on the counter again, crisp and new. The registration card was blank. "I need to check out," I panted, "now." She didn't move, just looked at me like she was waiting for a line she'd heard 1,000 times. I slapped the key down. "Keep the change, whatever, I'm leaving." She blinked once, slow. And then, everything reset. The bell jangled again. I was standing just inside the door, overnight bag on my shoulder, heart still racing, but for no reason I could name. The girl was folding her hands. The 20 was in front of her. The registration card was blank. "Room for one?" I heard myself ask, voice calm, like the last 5 minutes hadn't happened. I stumbled backward out the door, fog closing around me. My truck was right where I'd parked it. Room 6 key cold in my hand. I stood there shaking, trying to piece together what the hell just happened. Then I walked back in, determined to break whatever loop this was. Same girl, same 20, same whisper about the ice machine. I did it 7 times. 7 times I paid, 7 times I took the key, 7 times I came running back after finding those teeth, and every single time, the lobby snapped back like a rubber band. By the 5th loop, I was screaming at her, begging, threatening. She never changed expression, just waited, patient as stone. On the 8th time, I was too tired to yell. I laid the key on the counter and just looked at her, really looked. There were bruises under her eyes like she hadn't slept in years, and her smock was faded almost white from too many washings. "How do I leave?" I asked, voice raw. She leaned forward the tiniest bit, like speaking too loud would break something. "They won't let you leave until someone new checks in," she whispered. "I've been waiting a long time." I backed out slow, left the key on the counter, and walked to my truck. I didn't look back. I pulled onto the shoulder of the parkway, locked the doors, reclined the seat as far as it would go, and sat there shaking until the sky turned the color of weak coffee. A state trooper knocked on my window around 7, asked if I was okay. I told him I'd nodded off waiting for a tow. He pointed across the road. "You know that place has been boarded up since '02, right? Kids keep breaking in, starting fires. Owner disappeared, left his daughter running a desk. She vanished too, couple weeks later. Sad thing." I looked where he pointed. The Laurel Rest Inn was a burnt-out shell. Windows plywood, roof caved in, weeds growing through the parking lot cracks. No neon sign, no office light, no scared girl waiting behind a counter that didn't exist anymore. I still drive that stretch sometimes. Never at night, never when the fog rose in thick. And every time I pass mile marker 171, I slow down just enough to glance at the shoulder where I slept that night. Sometimes, when the light is right, I swear I can see a faint yellow glow through the broken windows, and a small, pale face watching the road, hands folded, waiting for the next person who needs 4 hours of sleep and has a $20 bill they'll never get back. We were coming back from my wife's cousin's wedding in Asheville, trying to make it home to Richmond before dark, but 6-month-old Caleb had other plans. He screamed from the moment we buckled him in until we were somewhere south of Roanna Gap, face red, tiny fists balled up like he was mad at the whole world. Sarah was in the back seat with him, rocking the car seat, singing every lullaby she knew, tears running down her own cheeks because nothing worked. By the time the sun started bleeding out behind the ridges, we were both hollow-eyed and desperate for any place that would let us lie down. That's when the hand-painted sign appeared through the drizzle. Hollow Pine Lodge, vacancies, cribs available. It sat off a gravel spur road like it had grown there, 2 stories of dark logs and a wide porch that sagged in the middle. I'd never seen it before, and I've driven the parkway 100 times. The lobby smelled of wood smoke and wet dog. An older woman with iron gray hair twisted into a knot greeted us from behind a desk made of half a tree trunk. She took one look at Caleb, finally quiet, thumb in mouth, eyelids fluttering, and softened. "Poor lamb," she murmured. "We've got room 8 ready, only one with a crib left. Even has a monitor, complimentary." She said it like we'd won something. Sarah and I were too tired to care that the woman never asked for a credit card, just took the cash I laid down and handed over a heavy iron key. Room 8 was at the far end of the 2nd floor, past a long hallway lit by amber bulbs that buzzed like trapped flies. The room was bigger than I expected. Pine paneling from floor to ceiling, a stone fireplace cold and black. Quilt on the bed the colors of autumn leaves. The crib was old but solid, dark wood carved with tiny moons and stars. On the dresser sat the monitor, one of those older models with the separate camera and receiver, beige plastic gone yellow, little red power light already glowing. A sticky note on top read, "Welcome, batteries fresh." Sarah gave me a look that said, "We'll take anything that keeps him asleep." So I plugged the receiver on the nightstand and set the camera on the shelf above the crib. Caleb went down without a fight for the first time all day, tiny chest rising and falling under the thin blanket we'd brought from home. We left the lights low, just the lamp by the door, and lay on top of the quilt still in our clothes. The silence of the lodge pressed in, thick and watchful. No highway noise, no other guests, just the soft tick of rain on the tin roof and the occasional creak of old wood settling. Sarah was out in minutes, one hand curled toward the crib like even in sleep she needed to know he was there. I lay awake longer, listening to the monitor's gentle static, watching the green video glow flicker across the ceiling. Around midnight the static changed, a soft click, then the faint sound of breath. Not Caleb's quick baby breaths, but slower, adult, close to the microphone. I sat up, heart already speeding. The screen showed the crib perfectly, blanket rising and falling, but the breathing wasn't coming from him. Then the voice, a woman, low and sweet, singing something I didn't recognize, words half swallowed like she was singing through water. "Hush now, my darling, sleep safe and sound. Moonlight will keep you from harm all around. No crying, no weeping, no sorrow tonight. Mama is watching with all of her might." The voice was beautiful and wrong at the same time, too intimate, like someone leaning over the crib we couldn't see. Sarah stirred beside me, eyes opening. She heard it too. We both stared at the monitor. Caleb was still asleep, but the camera angle had shifted slightly, as if someone had nudged it. The singing stopped. Silence stretched so long I could hear Sarah's pulse in her throat. Then, the voice again, no longer singing, just a whisper pressed right against the microphone. "I can see him breathing." Sarah was out of bed before I could move. She ran to the crib and stopped dead. Empty. Blanket folded neat, indentation still warm where his body had been. A sound came out of her I hope I never hear again, half scream, half sob. I tore the room apart, under the bed, in the closet, behind the dresser, calling his name like he could answer. Sarah yanked open the bathroom door, and there he was, Caleb, lying in the dry bathtub, on a folded towel we didn't bring, sleeping just as peaceful as before, lips pursed around his thumb. We stood frozen, staring. Big, wet handprints glistened on the inside of the porcelain, 4 on each side, fingers too long, palms too wide, like someone had stood in the tub and pressed out with everything they had. Water still dripped from the tips, slow and steady. The prints were fresh. Sarah scooped him up and held him so tight I thought she'd leave bruises. I grabbed our bags, the diaper bag, everything I could carry in one arm, and we ran. Down the hallway, past the closed doors that suddenly felt watchful, down the stairs 2 at a time. The lobby was empty, desk lamp off, no sign of the gray-haired woman. The front door stuck at first, then gave with a groan like something waking up angry. We didn't stop until we were in the car, doors locked, Caleb strapped in, engine roaring. I threw the monitor out the window somewhere near Little Switzerland, watched it bounce off the guardrail and disappear into the dark. We drove straight through to Richmond, 8 hours with Caleb finally quiet in the back and Sarah crying silent tears the whole way. We told ourselves it was over. Bad dream, carbon monoxide, anything but what we saw. Life tried to go back to normal. New monitor from Target. Pediatrician said Caleb was fine. No bruises, no trauma. We even laughed about it after a while, the way you laugh at anything that almost killed you. 3 weeks later, I walked into the nursery to check on him before bed. The nightlight was off. In the dark, I could see a small red dot glowing on the dresser, steady, patient. The old monitor sat there exactly where the new one should have been. Power cords snaking across the carpet to an outlet I never noticed before. The screen flickered to life on its own. Caleb's crib, same angle as room 8. He was asleep, chest rising and falling slow. The camera zoomed in by itself, smooth and silent, until his little face filled the screen. Then, the breathing started again. Adult, close, patient. The same voice, soft as a kiss. He's breathing so pretty tonight. I yanked the plug, smashed the thing against the floor until plastic cracked and the red light finally died. Took it out back and burned it in the fire pit until nothing was left but melted circuits and ash. We moved 2 months later. New house, new town, no forwarding address to anyone from that trip. But sometimes, when it's late and the house is too quiet, I'll walk past the mercery, now a guest room, and hear the faintest crackle of static from somewhere in the walls. And on the worst nights, when Caleb wakes crying for no reason we can find, Sarah and I stand over his bed together and watch the rise and fall of his chest under the blanket, counting breaths, waiting for the moment the blanket keeps moving, but the crib is empty again. I sell industrial fittings for a company out of Charlotte, which means I spend half my life chasing purchase orders across North Carolina, Tennessee, and Southwest Virginia. The money's decent, but the hours are murder. To keep my numbers up, I started driving to Blue Ridge Parkway at night. No traffic, no state troopers hiding behind billboards. Just me, a thermos of burnt convenience store coffee, and whatever audiobook I haven't already heard twice. There's something about the way the mountains swallow sound after midnight that makes the miles disappear faster. I'd done it 100 times without trouble. That changed the night the Shadowline Motor Court decided it was my turn. It was late October again. Seems like every bad thing I've lived through happens when the leaves die. Rain had been spitting on the windshield for hours, the kind that never quite turns into a real storm, just keeps everything slick and miserable. I was somewhere south of Blowing Rock, fighting sleep with the window cracked and country gospel turned up loud enough to rattle my teeth, when the fog rolled in so thick I had to slow to 30. Headlights barely cut 20 feet. I was looking for any overlook to pull off and nap when the motel appeared on the right like someone flipped a switch. Single story, L-shaped, maybe 20 units. The sign was one of those old ones with arrows of light bulbs chasing each other around the letters, except half were burned out and the rest glowed a sickly pink. Shadow Line Motor Court. The office light was off, but one room at the far end had a faint glow under the door. I almost kept driving. Something about the place felt off, like a house everybody knows is empty but you still cross the street to avoid. But my eyes were burning and the coffee was gone, so I turned in. Gravel popped under the tires. The lot was empty except for a rusted-out Chevy Impala on blocks near the dumpsters. I parked in front of the office, left the engine running, and sat there a minute listening to the rain tick on the roof. Finally, I killed the lights, grabbed my wallet, and stepped out. The air smelled like wet leaves and diesel. The office door opened before I touched it. The old woman standing there looked like she'd been carved out of hickory and left to season. Skin the color of walnut shells, hair white and thin, pulled back so tight her eyebrows lifted. She wore a faded housecoat and bedroom slippers with the backs folded down. Her eyes were sharp, black, and didn't blink as much as they should. "Room for one?" I asked, water dripping off my jacket onto the linoleum. She smiled with small, even teeth. "We only rent to folks driving alone, sugar." Her voice was soft, mountain soft, the kind grandmothers use right before they tell you the devil walks these roads at night. I laughed a little, figuring she was just old and nosy. "Yes, ma'am, just me." She nodded, like that settled something important, and named a price so low I thought I misheard. "Cash only." I peeled off the bills and she tucked them into a pocket without counting. Then she handed me a key on a diamond-shaped plastic fob. "Room 18, end unit, farthest from the office. Checkouts whenever you leave," she said, "but most folks don't." I told myself she was joking. Room 18 smelled like pine cleaner and old cigarettes. Standard roadside fare. Paneled walls, orange bedspread, a television with a screen the size of a pizza box chained to the dresser. I dropped my overnight bag, used the bathroom, set my phone alarm for 5:30, and crawled under the cover still wearing my jeans. The rain picked up, drumming hard on the roof. I remember thinking it sounded like fingers tapping, then nothing. I woke to silence so complete it hurt my ears. The clock on the nightstand read 3 o'clock, exactly, red numbers sharp against the dark. Rain had stopped. My mouth was dry and my heart was already racing for no reason I could name. Then I heard the first door. Click, creak, slam. Room 1, I figured. Then room 2. Same sequence. Latch open and slow, hinges complaining, door closing with a solid thud. It moved down the row steady as a heartbeat. Click, creak, slam. Click, creak, slam. I sat up in bed, sheets cold around my waist, and counted. 10, 11, 12. My room was 18. The sound reached room 17 and I was on my feet, bare soles on gritty carpet, moving before my brain caught up. I pressed my eye to the peephole just as my own door handle began to turn. Through the fisheye lens, the parking lot was lit by that same sick pink glow from the sign. And they were there. Dozens of them, men, women, some tall, some hunched, all standing perfectly still in the rain-slick gravel. Faces I couldn't make out, just dark hollows where eyes should be. Every single one held up a key, brass glinting as they raised them in unison like some silent toast. My key, room 18's key. The handles on the other doors all hung open, swaying slightly though there was no wind. My door rattled once, gentle, testing, then stopped. I backed away until my shoulders hit the dresser. The television flickered on by itself, volume low, nothing but snow and a soft hum. The people outside didn't move, just stood there holding their keys waiting. I don't know how long I stared, minutes, maybe an hour. Eventually, the pink light dimmed, the figures faded into the fog, and the light went dark. I didn't sleep again. At first light, I opened the door with the chain still on. Every room up and down the row stood open except mine. Beds stripped, drawers pulled out, personal belongings scattered like someone had searched for something and left in a hurry. My car was the only vehicle in the lot. The Impala on blocks was gone. The office door hung open too, but when I stepped inside, it was empty. No counter, no chair, just bare concrete and a single word painted fresh on the wall in dripping red. No vacancy. The old woman was nowhere. The cash I'd paid was stacked neat on the floor, my exact bills arranged in a little pyramid. My key worked fine to lock the room behind me, like nothing had changed. I threw my bag in the car and got out of there doing 90 on roads still wet and foggy. I looked up the Shadowline Motor Court later. Nothing online, no records, no old postcards. Asked truckers at the big stop in Fancy Gap. Nobody had ever heard of it. Drove the same stretch in daylight a dozen times and never saw so much of foundation. But every few months, when I'm running behind and the fog comes down thick and I'm the only soul on that road, my GPS will lose signal for exactly 2 minutes and the pink glow appears in the rear view. Faint, always behind me, never close enough to catch. And sometimes when I stop for coffee at 3 a.m. and reach for my keys, there's an extra one on the ring. Brass, diamond fob, number 18, worn almost smooth. I throw it out the window every time. It's always back by morning. I've stopped asking how. I just keep driving, radio loud, windows up, praying I never see another empty parking lot with a pink sign that knows I'm traveling alone. I found the Mountain Mist Inn the way most people find things they later wish they hadn't, by scrolling too late at night, half drunk on cheap bourbon, and the kind of loneliness that makes you click book now just to feel like you're going somewhere. The website was old, photos grainy, but the reviews glowed. Quiet, clean, perfect for a solo reset. I needed that. My mother had died 3 weeks earlier, sudden heart attack in the laundry room of the house I grew up in, and I hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch since the funeral. So I packed a bag, told work I had a family emergency, and drove west until the parkway narrowed and the cell service died. The inn sat in a hollow off a winding spur road, 3 stories of white clapboard gone bray, wrap-around porch lined with rocking chairs that moved even when no one was sitting in them. October fog clung to the mountains like wet cotton. A hand-painted sign read, "Welcome to Mountain Mist, ST 1923. The owner, Mrs. Whitlock, met me at the door. She was small, bird-boned, wearing a cardigan despite the wood stove heat, and her smile never quite reached eyes the color of creek ice. "You're our only guest tonight," she said, taking my cash without writing anything down. "Wound 5 is ready. Some folks cover the mirror when they're tired, makes the room feel bigger." She pointed to the dresser as she handed me the key, where a long mirror hung under a faded floral sheet. I laughed, told her I wasn't superstitious. She just nodded like I'd said something sad. Room 5 smelled of lemon lil and old smoke. The bed was high, quilt heavy, the kind that pins you down once you're under it. A single window looked out on nothing but fog and dark trunks. I dropped my bag, poured 2 fingers of bourbon into a plastic cup, and sat on the edge of the bed staring at the covered mirror. I don't know why it bothered me. I've never been afraid of my own reflection, but something about that sheet, yellowed, tied at the corners with careful knots, felt like a warning I was too stubborn to heed. Eventually I needed to shave. The bathroom light was a sickly fluorescent that buzzed like a trapped moth. I pulled the sheet off the mirror and let it fall to the floor. The glass was old, wavy at the edges, silver back and spotted black in places. I leaned down, lathered up, and started scraping 3 days of grief off my face. That's when I saw him. Same height as me, same dark hair going too early at the temples, same green flannel shirt I'd thrown on that morning. But his face was wrong, swollen, purple along the cheekbones, lips split, one eye puffed shut, blood crusted in his beard. He stood directly behind me, close enough that I should have felt his breath on my neck. His right hand rose slow, palm open, fingers trembling like he was begging me to turn around. I did, razor still in my hand, suds sliding down my throat. The room was empty, just the bed, the chair, the open door to the bathroom where the light flickered once and steadied. I stood there long enough for the lather to dry and crack. When I looked back at the mirror, it was only me again, pale, unshaven, eyes red from crying in the car. I finished shaving with the door locked and the shower curtain pulled across like that could stop anything. I tried to sleep, but the bourbon only made the quiet louder. The inn creaked and settled around me, old bones complaining. Around 2 in the morning, the pounding started, not knocking, pounding, hard enough to rattle the frame. A man's voice, raw and breaking, screaming my name. My full name, the one nobody uses anymore. Please God, let me in, they're coming. Over and over, fists slamming wood, then weaker, like he was sliding down the door. I sat on the bed with the lamp on, covers pulled to my chin, telling myself it was a prank, drunk hunters, anything but what it sounded like. The screaming turned to sobbing, then to a wet gurgling I couldn't unhear. After a while it stopped. I never opened the door. Morning came slow and gray. I waited until I heard Mrs. Whitlock moving downstairs before I turned the knob. The hallway was empty, carpet unmarked. My door looked untouched. I went back inside to pack and saw the room for the first time in daylight. It was destroyed. The mattress lay half off the bed, sheets shredded, stuffing pulled out in long pale ropes. The dresser was overturned, drawers dumped. Blood, fresh, bright, arced across the wallpaper in looping patterns, like someone had swung a brush full of it. Handprints smeared down the window. And the mirror. The mirror showed me standing in the wreckage, exactly as I was, jeans, flannel, unshaven, except the reflection held a knife dripping red, and his face was the one I'd seen the night before. Bruised, bloody, one eye swollen shut. He raised the same pleading hand, slower this time, and mouthed something I couldn't read. I backed out of the room, left the key on the hall table, and walked past Mrs. Whitlock without speaking. She was polishing the banister, humming under her breath, same tune I'd heard in my head all night. Some guests don't like seeing themselves tired, she called after me, gentle as ever. I drove until the tank was nearly empty, stopped at a gas station outside Boone and used the bathroom. I hadn't looked in a mirror since pulling that sheet off. When I finally did, the bruises were there, faint purple along my left cheekbone, a deeper shadow under my right eye. Not makeup, not tricks of light, real, tender when I pressed them. I told myself it was stress, grief, anything. The bruises faded in a week, but they never went away completely. There's always a shadow under the skin now, like a watermark. And sometimes, when I'm alone in a hotel bathroom shaving before another funeral I don't want to attend, the reflection lags half a second behind me, just long enough for the swelling to bloom again, for the split lip to glisten, for that hand to rise in silent warning. I still cover mirrors when I can, and I never, ever open the door when someone starts screaming my name at 2 in the morning, because I know whose voice it is now, and I know what he's trying to keep me from doing. I've been pulling a rig for 23 years, mostly dry vans out of Greensboro, running produce up to DC or furniture down to Atlanta. You learn the roads like the lines on your own hands. Every curve on 52, every way station is closed on Sundays, every stretch of the Blue Ridge Parkway where the deer like to commit suicide under your tandems. You also learn the stories. Truckers talk, especially on the CB after midnight when the coffee's gone cold and the miles start blurring. There's one tale that floats around the pilot in Whiteville and the TA in Kingsport, always told in the same half-whisper. The Wander Inn, a little single-story motel, white with green doors, Sign flickers between wander in and vacancy, like it can't decide what he wants to be. Supposedly it's never parked in the same spot twice. Supposedly it only shows up when you're too tired to ask questions. Most guys laugh it off. I did, until the night it decided I was the one who needed a room. It was late fall, the week before Thanksgiving, and I was hauling a load of Christmas decorations, cheap plastic Santas and those blow-mold reindeer, from a warehouse in Martinsville down to a distributor outside Asheville. I'd promised my dispatcher I'd have it there by morning, which meant no sleep, just caffeine and the hum of 18 tiles on wet asphalt. I'd been rolling since 4 a.m., eyes gritty, shoulders locked up tight. Somewhere south of Roanoke the fog came down heavy, the kind that makes your high beams useless and turns every reflector into a pair of eyes watching you pass. My Garmin lost its mind, screen blinking, no signal, then just froze on a gray square. I was looking for any wide spot to pull over when the sign appeared on the right shoulder, pale blue neon cutting through the soup. Wander in, vacancy. I almost didn't stop. Something about the way the light post felt wrong, like a heartbeat that wasn't quite human. But my eyelids were sliding shut on their own and the next exit was 20 miles. I took the ramp slow, gravel crunching under the tires, and rolled into a small asphalt lot lit by one buzzing floodlight. The building was exactly like the stories, long and low, maybe 12 rooms, fresh white paint that looked too bright against the dark trees. A single soda machine glowed red by the office door. No other trucks, no cars, nothing. Just the soft tick of my engine cooling and the fog pressing close. The office bell gave a tired ding when I pushed through. Inside smelled of coffee left too long on the burner and something sharp underneath, like wet pennies. The clerk stood behind the counter, motionless, tall, thin, wearing a gray uniform 2 sizes too big. His skin was the color old paper and his eyes didn't blink when he looked at me. No name tag, no expression. He just slid a registration card across the counter and tapped a line for a signature. I scrawled my name, Travis L. Caldwell, and asked how much. 40, he said, voice flat, like he'd said the same word a million times and forgotten what it meant. Cash only. I peeled off 2 20s from the roll I keep in my boot and laid them down. He didn't pick them up, just reached under the counter and set a key on top of the bills. Brass, heavy, tag worn smooth except for the number 9. Then he pointed toward the far end of the building and went back to staring at nothing. Room 9 was clean in a way that made my skin crawl. Too clean, like someone had scrubbed it with bleach right before I walked in. The bedspread was that shiny green stuff from the 70s, tucked so tight you could bounce a quarter. The air smelled of pine cleaner laid over something damp and earthy, like a basement that never quite dried out. I kicked off my boots, set my alarm for 4:30, and was asleep before my head dented the pillow. I woke up to sunlight on my face and the sound of birds. That alone was wrong. It had been pouring when I parked. I sat up slow, head thick, and reached for my phone. No signal, but the clock read 8:12 a.m. My Garmin was on a nightstand where I'd left it charging. I turned it on and watched the little wheel spin. Then the screen lit up with a map I didn't recognize. According to the GPS, I was parked outside Asheville, 110 miles west of where I'd fallen asleep, right off Highway 70 near the French Broad River. I stared at it for a long time, trying to remember driving, fueling, anything after the clerk's dead eyes. Nothing, just a black hole where 6 hours should have been. I dressed fast, grabbed my bag, and stepped outside. The motel looked exactly the same. White walls, green doors, same red soda machine. But the mountains were different. Sharper ridges, taller pines, the smell of river instead of mountain laurel. My truck sat in the same spot, mud flaps still dripping like I'd just pulled in. The clerk was waiting by the office door, holding a receipt on one of those old green and white carbon forms. He handed it over without a word. At the bottom, under the $40 charge, someone had typed in block letters, "See you tomorrow, different mile marker." I opened my mouth to ask what the hell that meant, but he was already gone. Door closed, blinds pulled tight. I climbed into the cab, fired up the engine, and got back on the road, shaking so hard I could barely hold the wheel steady. I delivered the load 2 hours late, told the receiver I'd blown a tire, paid the late fee out of pocket, and swore on everything holy I'd never stop at any place I hadn't seen in daylight first. 3 nights later I was running north again, empty trailer this time, trying to make Knoxville before the weekend rush. I'd been awake 21 hours, fighting micro-sleeps that jerked me across the rumble strips. Near bone, the fog came down again, thick as felt. My eyes were sliding shut at 60 miles an hour when the blue neon flickered on the right shoulder. Same as before, Wanda Inn, vacancy. I slammed the brakes so hard the trailer jackknifed, tires screaming. The lot was empty except for my own headlights cutting tunnels through the mist. Same white building, same green doors, same red soda machine humming its lonely song. I sat there with the engine idling, telling myself to keep driving, telling myself I was hallucinating from exhaustion. But my hands turned the wheel anyway. Gravel crunched. I parked in the exact same spot as the first time, walked to the office on legs that didn't feel like mine. The clerk was waiting, same gray uniform, same dead stare. He slid the registration card across. My signature was already there, dated tomorrow. He laid the key on top, room 9 again, and pointed down the row. The room smelled stronger this time, pine cleaner barely covering the wet earth reek. I opened the nightstand drawer to throw in my phone charger and found a receipt from the first stay, folded neat, dated the day after tomorrow. I slept anyway, 'cause my body didn't give me a choice. I've lost count now, 12, 15. The Wanda Inn finds me whenever I'm too tired to fight it. Always on a different stretch of road, always the same $40 I never see again. Always room 9, smelling more like turned soil than the last time. Sometimes I'll wake up and the receipt in the drawer is dated yesterday, sometimes next week. Time's getting soft around the edges. I still drive, because it's all I know how to do. But every mile marker looks the same now, and when the fog comes, I don't fight it anymore. I just whisper I'm sorry to the picture of my wife taped above the dash, and turn toward the blue light that knows exactly how tired I am. One of these nights I won't wake up at all. I'll just open my eyes to the clerk standing over the bed, holding a shovel instead of a key, telling me checkouts whenever I'm ready. And I'll finally understand why the earth in room 9 always smells wet.